Okay.
And you should be live.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to your new favorite weekly series, Grace Under Pressure, where we will feature interview royal consorts from around the known world, starting with some of our favorite duchesses. This week, we are lucky to have Mary Grace of Gotland. Next week, we'll be interviewing Duchess Magdalena of Calontir. Now let's meet our hosts.
Oh, our host. It's our new favorite co-host, Sir Joel de Grace, I guess it depends on how pretentious we want to be, Joel, who started in the SCA 16 years ago in the now Kingdom of Northshield and is now in Calontir by way of the Outlands and Artemisia and some other various kingdoms along the way. And his consort is his wife, the Honorable Lady Aniela. And this week's fun fact about Joel is that he wore a kilt in the SCA for a while, but he has recovered. He's recovered. Nobody needs to worry about this. He has recovered. So
they brought me back to the light. And I am joined by the best co-host ever, Duchess Dagmar of Antir, who also lived and thrived in the West Kingdom. Her first reign was as Princess of Sinagua, and has since had 2 reigns in Antir with her husband, Duke Thorin Nielsen. She's recognized as a laurel in sass and badassery in July of 2000. And this week's fun fact about her grace is that in her first barony, she was made the permanent big bard of a bardic troupe called the Hummingbards.
You know, the intention with these fun facts is that if we reveal every humiliating thing about ourselves publicly, it will be impossible to bribe us, at least, or to blackmail us rather, at least in the SCA. I outside of the SCA, Joel, you're on your own, but I think in the SCA, we'll just get it all out in the open, expose ourselves as much as is allowable on Facebook, and then we'll be good, okay?
Oh, I have a lot of poor decisions in my past there, so I'm sure we're gonna have plenty of fun facts to be able to get through.
Fabulous.
And let's see.
We also want to expend a special thank you to Ashaxi, who's lurking on this call. She's going to be handling our questions, and she also bailed us out of our tech difficulties because we were having account problems. Who knew that would happen? We knew. I mean, really, that's just the way it goes. And Ashaxi and Rifkin have been really generously working with us to launch this new interview series, and they are going to be hosting this on the Sisters Interview Network, which is really exciting for us. So thank you so very much. And now Joel will introduce our inaugural guest. Pray attend the words of Sir Joel.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are fortunate today to be joined by one of the most beautiful roses in the SCA. She is known across the entire world for her grace, for her presence, for her ability to inspire others. She has had 5 reigns in 2 different kingdoms. Sorry.
We'll double check that later.
I'm gonna fact check myself on that one. So, but we are fortunate, and we very happily welcome Mary Grace of Gotland to the show today.
Mary Grace, she magically appears.
Yeah, it's 3 kingdoms and 1 principality.
So close.
Well, it technically was in one of those kingdoms. So
close.
So yeah.
I'll do better next time, I promise.
Okay, it's okay. I'm unusual in that way. So.
It's not the only of your distinguishing features, Mary Grace, and we are so very thrilled to have you with us for our first attempt at this. And if we fail miserably, we will definitely have you back so that we can put you in the very, very best possible light. So
awesome! No, I'm honored to be your inaugural guest. So thank you.
Excellent. And we have some photos that we'll get to as we go along, but if you think of any question where you would like for us to pull one of those up, we can flash over to that.
Got it.
But first, we're going to start with a really basic question about your SCA origins and what brought you originally to the SCA.
Yeah, so everybody should have a starter marriage. So I had one of those, like most people. And actually, lovely gentleman. We just married young, but he is the first person that introduced me to the SCA. I was always very much into history, and I read a lot. But he grew up in Texas, just outside of Houston, where there's a massive Ren Fest, and so he kind of got involved with Onstiora as a teenager. And then I went to college at NC State in North Carolina, and he was stationed up there in the military. And when we first got together, he's like, "Hey, there's this thing." And so, so we went to a couple like fighter practices in Atlanta, but then we got moved back to Louisiana, coincidentally, where I am originally from, and started playing there. And I went to my first event. I'll never forget. So I did home ec in high school, but I made my grandmother make my like final sewing project. So so my first garb was real sad. My neighbor kind of helped me. And I remember going to my very first event, and the king and queen were head to toe Elizabethan. And I was like, okay, I'm going to come back, but I need to look like that. That is what needs to happen now. So I immediately tried to become self-taught, and this is early 90s. So hello, people out there, there was no internet. Okay, this was going to the library and getting books, and I lived in a shire that was a t-shirt and blue jean shire. Like nobody knew how to help me. But so my first like passion was like, because I'm a Southern girl, like I was used to the sort of antebellum stuff, the hoop skirts and then pageants and all that. And I was like so drawn to the clothes. And so that was like my immediate, like, this was so fun. But my best memory of my very first event was serving at Feast. And so, the lights were all off and there was candlelight, and I was helping in the kitchen and I was serving, and I had at my very first event what we call that magic moment where the mundane world goes away and I was hooked. And so while I immediately knew I wanted to upgrade my wardrobe, I also knew that these were my people, like that understood my passion for history. So it was awesome.
That's wonderful. And what about persona wise? What were you aiming for? We all start with something different than what we end up with.
For sure. For sure. So persona wise, I was definitely drawn to late Tudor, early Elizabethan. Like that was, and my story I've written down somewhere is my father works for Henry VIII, and he runs a plantation in Ireland. And I'm a contemporary of his son, Edward. And I grew up in Ireland, but I get sent back to England to try to find a husband. So that's my story. And I did late period most of my early SCA career until I found the 14th century. I still late, and you probably remember my coronation gown from Ontier. Like that is my favorite period, that late Tudor before it gets full Elizabethan. But 14th century I found is easier. So I'm mostly just 14th century, but that's my persona story.
I know intimately because I did sew your intimates.
You did. You helped quite a bit.
So you've had quite a few reigns now, and you have quite a bit of experience now. What would current you go back and tell pre-first reign you?
So I figured this out the minute that I stepped down from my first reign, and it's not something that you can tell yourself before then. And it sounds a little poor little rich girl, but you can never go back. So, I had stood behind the throne a bunch. Like I'd been lady in waiting a ton. I'd been the SCA about 8 years before I had the opportunity to be queen the first time. And I thought I knew how this is going to work. I know what it's going to be like. And it is different sitting in the big chair, right? And having all the responsibility on you. But then I also thought, but then I'm going to be done and I'm just going to be Mary Grace again. Yeah. And I get just to be me. And I see Dagmar shaking her head, and it's, and while there are so many benefits and so much goodness and opportunity that comes with being a rose, and I would not give that away for anything, you don't ever get to go back. And that expectation of how you behave and how you dress and what you should do and what you shouldn't do as a queen remains with you then forever. And so that level of responsibility as a royal peer. And so one of the things that's different, so I became a royal peer in Atlantia, and in Atlantia you get a patent with your rose, which doesn't happen everywhere. And so that really means the seriousness of that peerage is equal unto the other ones. And I don't think that and I remember thinking, okay, yeah, I get to be a countess, but holy crap, I have to be a rose, right? And so that expectation, but I don't know that fully sunk in for me until it happened, and that you understand what that means. And so while I could have told the Lady Mary Grace that was going to happen, until you're there, it's hard to appreciate.
Okay. What would be the biggest piece of advice that you would try to give to someone who is working towards their first reign, or looking at becoming a rose?
So absolutely. So I always tell people it's a kingdom office you sign up for in a really wacky way, right? So it's a job just like any other, kingdom seneschal or exchequer, whatever. There is a Monday through Friday aspect to that, right? So it's not just showing up on the weekends. It's a part-time job. You're a regional officer for a 501c not-for-profit organization. So I think most people, they understand the work, but I think that the biggest thing that I always tell everybody is that, number one, it's not about you. That you are in a very small segment of the population in this organization that will ever get that opportunity. And there are hundreds of people living through you. And so part of that job while you're at events is is taking that moment to stop and talk to that person, to thank this person. You need to be very careful about having your you got to have your vent moments, right? But you need to do that behind closed doors with trusted people, because there are hundreds and thousands of people in this organization that will never get that vantage point. And so you have to appreciate that you are doing this job for them and that they're living their dream through you. And you have to make yourself vulnerable and open yourself up to that experience. And if you are able to do that and give a piece of your heart to your populace, you will get it back 100-fold. The things that people have done for me, made for me, given me, the time, the energy over the past 20 years is absolutely mind-blowing. And I don't know that I've done enough to deserve all those things that they've done for me, but I've always tried to approach the job with a full heart and understanding that I am so lucky to have that vantage point. I remember the first time I was queen at Penzic and standing on that stage and seeing all those people and thinking, man, how many of those people will ever get to stand where I stand right now? I am beyond humbled to have that opportunity. And so if you approach it with that, it's not that it's easy, but it will be worth the work.
Yep. I think that's really important. And the honor of being a consort in the first place, and having that kind of relationship with somebody, that kind of trust from the beginning is so special. But then, to have achieved the rank of queen and the office of queen, I really appreciate you saying that. It is a job. It's it has its ups and downs. One of the really positive sides I have found is that you get to meet an amazing group of people who are willing to do amazing things to serve the reigns. And I would love this. I know this sounds very much like a job interview question, but I just think you will have a great answer for it. How would your past heads of retinue describe working for you? What kind of a queen were you?
So I will tell you, because Master Charles de Bourbon has been
Yeah. While you're talking, I'm going to show a couple photos of your retinue from what you sent me, but go ahead.
Great. Yeah. So Master Charles de Bourbon was my head of retinue twice, and he kept reminding me, be a queen, not a pelican. So I am a pelican. I am a very organized person, and I've been head of retinue for other people. So the biggest thing for me, and I have to remind myself, is to let go, right? Like there are people that are excited to help you. I think they would say that I'm very organized, and it's helpful for me that I have people that kind of share a brain with me. And I've been incredibly lucky every reign to have people that we can sit down, have a big powwow, and like these are the things that I really care about. Other than that, I trust you to do the job, and that's the biggest thing, is that you have to trust that person to make decisions on your behalf. Otherwise, you will be micromanaging yourself and your staff to death. So yeah, I mean, the most important thing for me is that the staff all feels appreciated. So I've tried to find in every reign a way to include people. There are people that I met through them being retinue that I maybe never would have met otherwise. So it's always very important for us. Like you may have a core group, but we always reach out to every single group we travel to and say, hey, do you have some people that would want to volunteer? Right. And so that's been very important to me, making sure that they get tokens or favors. But yeah, that is probably my failing, is to be able to let go and understand somebody else is doing it, right? I'm not the pelican. I need to do my job as queen and not be the organizer.
I think that's a great point. And it looks like you had a lot of fun with your retinue. I hope people were able to see those and not me trying to navigate around.
Yeah, there's one really funny one from Atlantia. So we had the ladies that all had the matching garb. And so I made everybody's sideless surcoats. Yep. And they all got this same bolt of yellow fabric because I wanted to be able to spot them easily. And they named themselves Mary's Canaries because it was this bright yellow underdress. And there's a great picture of me just cracking up at them. So it was an amazing group of ladies.
I think I just shared that, but let me do that again really quick because it is pretty great. Joel, can you see that?
Yep, I can.
Yeah.
And these two little girls in the front are now all grown up. It's crazy.
That's great. And so this is 2021. And
no, sorry, this is 2001. It shouldn't be 2021.
2000. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we go from there. We see you. Let's see. I'm moving ahead here. And here's another one where I see you have a whole bunch of retinue down in front of you.
Yeah, that was our step down.
Yep, in yellow and blue, and with their the baldricks on. And so this is also from 2001.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And I love the idea of getting everybody in the same clothes, but you know how non-compliant people on tier can be. I can just imagine what it would be like to get everybody to agree to something here. That's really funny. So, well, the other piece of this, of course, is we were talking about inter-kingdom cultural differences. And one of the reasons we thought you would be a great person to start this off is because of the different kingdoms you've reigned in. They are quite different. And they're different in ways that make them interesting and unique and speak to their culture that has developed, that are both products of the regions they're in, but also the people who have been in leadership positions or who have been, working in that kingdom from before it was even a kingdom, right? And I'm always intrigued by the way retinues, or depending on what kingdom you're in, they're not even called retinues, they're called different things. The ways that the reigns are staffed and the traditions from kingdom to kingdom. And could you speak just a little bit about that? Because it is structured a little differently depending on where you are and what the local culture is used to.
Yeah, so I started in Meridies before Glenavon was a kingdom, and I was one of the first regional officers of the region of Glenavon. And then before Glenavon became a kingdom, I moved to Atlantia. So I'd done some what we call entourage. That's what we call. We didn't use the red retinue. We call it entourage in Meridies.
That's an important difference, right there.
And so I think because the kingdom was smaller, it tended to be a little less structured. I mean, you had ladies in waiting and guards and things like that. Similar, I think, in Atlantia. I mean, I think we had more people. And so while we had a, like a head of entourage, we didn't have as much sort of like department heads and things like that. Ontario is so large. Yeah. We probably had about 100 people in our group. And so we had, we had 2 people that were they shared the head of entourage or head of retinue duty. And then we had, heads of the different departments and things like that. So I think the biggest part is just numbers, right? Like how many people you need. But, similar to what I said earlier, we always tried really hard to find people in each group so that the core people didn't have to travel to everything, right? Especially in a smaller kingdom. So I think when we reigned in Glenavon, I want to say we had like 1,000 registered members in the whole kingdom.
Wow.
And so to ask, a core group of 30 or 40 people but it was still like, we were in South Louisiana and to travel to the top of Arkansas, that might be 14, 15 hours. And the same 20 people shouldn't have to go everywhere, right? I always say at the end, Howard and I should be exhausted, but everybody else should have been like, that was really fun. So we tried to pick, a few people in every group. But, I think the structures are pretty similar. I think it just really comes down to numbers of how many people you need to make it successful. I think the biggest difference that I saw was from a court perspective, both in how you got recommendations, how you turn them around, how you prep for court, and scroll production. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that was crazy to me and on tier is that every reign gets an entire new set of scrolls, like, the designs. And it's amazing and remarkable that the community says, okay, what do you specifically want as king and queen? But I thought the burden on that community was extraordinary. And while I appreciated it, I was like, gosh, you guys really have to do that. And so that was, I find across the bar, across the board, Ontier's bar for arts and things is like really high, but sometimes that means you're putting a lot of pressure on the artisans to meet that bar.
Now, in fairness, Mary Grace, they were probably so excited to have a late period reign.
They were.
And to get to do.
They were like, no more Norse. Yeah. No, they were stoked for sure. But I'm like, you guys are doing so much work for like 6 months, right? Versus the other kingdoms, they have standard designs and different, and instead of making the scroll in the style of the crown, they would say, hey, Susie is getting X award and she's French. We have a French scroll in the stack. Let's do this for Susie. And so that was one thing I was like, I felt like it's geared towards the crown instead of the recipient of the award, and it's making it harder on the scribes. So, there's definitely differences from kingdom to kingdom, but Ontier it was much harder just because of the volume and the scope and the size of the population, for sure.
Yep. I really quickly, the third part of this question is sort of related. And what are your favorite traditions from the various kingdoms you have reigned in that as pertains to reigning?
Yes.
What did you love?
Yeah. So one of the things, in the pictures I shared with you, I shared one of the pictures the day I got my AOA, and I remember everything about that day.
Second slide.
I think it's on the early years slide. I remember everything about that day. I remember what I was wearing. I remember what the event was. I remember what happened. I remember who I sat with. I remember getting called into court, and that stuck with me. And for a large part of the population in the SCA. So yeah, that's me, 1997. That's me and Viscountess Rondelin. That's the biggest thing that's ever going to happen for a lot of people, right? Is that AOA. And in Meridies, you get a circlet. So you can see my little circlet I'm wearing there. Yep. That was handmade by the king at the time, Duke Perdruge. And I was on cloud 9. Like, that was the best thing that was ever going to happen to me in my entire life. And I was good with that, right? And that always stuck with me. And so when I moved to Atlantia that did not have sumptuary laws, which means anybody can wear a circlet, I was like, there's something about it. And so I asked Howard if he would be in. And so we decided to give circlets with AOAs, right? I'm not going to change the law, but there's something about the crown putting something on your head and telling you that you're noble, that I think is so special. And so when we were crowning on tier, we started that same tradition. And somebody once told me, an old Duke said, if you can get something to last 3 reigns, it'll be a tradition and it will stick. and it has stuck. And so that's something that's very, very special to me, because I think that for them, again, the majority of the populace, that's going to be maybe the biggest thing that happens to them, and to have that special thing from the crown, I just think is amazing. We were also the second king and queen of Glenavon, and so we had a great opportunity. And I know, Joel, being from North Shield, you went kingdom right before Glenavon, so some of those things, the first year you're like, well, we're just Meridier's 2.0, right? Like, what does that exactly mean? And so Howard had, he had been knighted in the West. He was from Atlantia. We had lived in Atlantia and reigned there. So we said, we kind of pushed them, like, hey, like, think about things. And so during our reign, we created some special things to help people, to inspire them to fight in crown tournament. So unlike on tier, where it's all comers and you can show up and there's probably 100 people, we maybe had lists of 12, 14, and it was this self-fulfilling prophecy, because the lists were so small, you had a higher chance of winning. If you had a higher chance of winning, you were super scared to fight. Maybe you weren't ready. And so we created 2 awards that were inspired by our travels. One was the Wreath of Chivalry. And so this is presented by the queen to the person that inspired her that day. And that person became her armored champion. And then the other was the Banner of Valor. And this is for the person that fought like so far above what you've ever seen them fight before. And so we introduced those 2 awards to encourage squires or unbelts to fight in crown, so that the list would be bigger, but also so they had something else to fight for. So those traditions continue today, and I'm super proud of that we were able to help make that happen.
And I would imagine technology also affected your reigns over the years.
Yes.
In different ways. What do you think were some of the biggest transformations, as things like email? I mean, we didn't have email for a while, and then we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have cell phones, and we didn't have online registration for your membership. I mean,
oh yeah, there was a lot more on paper. So our first reign, we did have a Yahoo group. That was like, ooh, that was a big deal, right? So we had a Yahoo group, but yeah, there was still a lot of on paper kind of things. Yeah, the past 2 reigns, both in Ontario and in the Principality, being able to have Facebook groups and have people to sign up, like in Google Sheets, like online before you got to the event, and you just printed things out. And also with awards, like so much easier. Like our first reign, we got voicemails on our answering machine. We got letters in the mail, so huge difference between 2000 and 2019 in terms of, being able to be prepared and organized before you got to an event, rather than, like, I remember, like, there would be like a 3-hour prep for every court, because you're like still sifting through, because people are walking up to you with a piece of paper and you're like filling out scrolls and, signing things and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been I think a huge boon, but also sometimes I feel like it takes some of the personalization out of it, sometimes just a little bit too, right? Because if you're just getting everything, through an inbox, you're maybe not interacting with some of those folks. But from an organizational standpoint, it definitely has made it a lot easier.
So now that you've had so much time to be able to get a feeling for what the various skill sets are behind being a royal peer, what do you feel like your individual greatest responsibility as a royal peer is?
Your greatest responsibility is to keep the dream alive for your populace, and to keep the mundane and ugly behind some mysterious door, right? Like, and I'm sure Dagmar will agree, like, and it's like any kingdom office, right? Sometimes you're like super excited, you go into this office and there are things about the SCA that are not pretty. I've got tons of friends that have sat on the board, and I have tons of respect at the fact that they can still play, because they see the worst of us, unfortunately. And, you know, being Crown and being Cornet, you get exposed to that as well. And I feel like your biggest responsibility is to keep that away from the populace. And your second biggest responsibility is to reward those who deserve it and to bring that light and that appreciation back to them. You know, when we started, I started in the early 90s, we were the only game in town. And also, you probably wouldn't tell people you worked with that you did this. It's a little weird, right? This is when we're still using our, you know, our newsletters to like use a map to figure out how to get to events. But we're in the age of the geek, right? Like, it's cool to be a cosplayer. There's like Cosplay Melee is a TV show. Everybody's into Game of Thrones. Like, it is a cool thing, but the inverse of that is that there's a lot of options for people, right? Like, people can go and do conventions and all these other things, and they can pay their money and show up for the week and go home. We ask a lot of people. We want you to be volunteer. You have to dress a certain way. You have to do it. And so if we aren't very cognizant about bringing people in and being kind and having that moment and thanking people just for turning up, just for giving that half an hour of their time, we're going to go the way of the dinosaur. I mean, it's going to happen, right? Because there's too many other options for people. And so as Crown, your biggest responsibility is to be the biggest shadow lane ever, to be the biggest welcomer, to thank people for coming up, you know, and you should be exhausted by the end of the day, you know, because you spent your time with everybody, right? So keep the ugly away, smile, and thank people. That is your job.
And that's a great perspective, because I know I still remember the very first Royal I ever met was Duchess Conlyac of the Outlands. And I very clearly remember my first interaction with her. Whenever someone that's new meets the shiny hats for Royal for the first time.
Hey, we're going to put a quarter in the quarter jar.
Every time you say shiny hat.
Yeah. And every time I drop an F-bomb, we're going to put a quarter in our virtual quarter jar. So that's one, right. Joel. That's one.
All right, I'll get one. But it's something that really sticks with people. So it's great to hear that your perspective on that, and that's so important to you having done this. Now, to change gears slightly, but not really, you were recognized as a Pelican in 2010. How do you feel like your time reigning impacted your path to being recognized as a Pelican? Did it enhance that? Did it take away from from how it all worked? You know, how do you feel about all that?
So that's an interesting question. I think if you achieve a rose before you achieve another peerage, the reset button starts. And everything that you did before you were a queen kind of goes away. And everything that you did after you were a queen is like, well, but she's a rose. So she should be, you know, she should be volunteering. She should be doing those things. And so I think it is kind of, again, it may sound a little bit poor little rich girl, but it is more challenging. And I've talked to other roses about this, and I think it is the thing, because in most kingdoms, regardless of whether you were an amazing queen or you didn't do the best job, you still get a rose. Now, there's some kingdoms where it's a polling order. I've never heard of them not giving it to anybody, whether or not my personal opinions that person should have got it or not. We'll save that for another talk. But yeah, I think, you know, I will admit, I think I spent about 6 months being real pissed off about it. Like, it's not fair. I did all this work for all this time, and just because I was queen, it doesn't matter anymore. And I had a little talk with myself, and I was like, okay, is it going to change anything that you would choose to do, whether you're a Pelican or not? Nope. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I decided it didn't matter anymore. And then it happened when it happened, right? And so I think that, you know, it is hard because once you're a queen, kind of like I said earlier, like you've sort of got some of those expectations that follow you around forever. But you can't worry about it. It will happen in its own time, and you should follow your bliss and do the things that make you happy. And when you do the things that make you happy, then those accolades will follow. But I'll admit, I was mad for about 6 months, and then I got over myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends a little bit on the kingdom, and I think it's definitely a perception that we've been trying to actively counteract, the idea that sitting on a throne is its own reward. And so
yeah, I heard, well, you got your cookie for that.
Yeah,
you got your cookie for that. And I'm like, okay, but I really go for her. Doesn't that count?
Yeah, and I mean, and I like to remind people when they care to listen that that's true, but you could also do a terrible job as queen, and you get the same cookie.
The same cookie, exactly.
So yeah, and I think the other piece of that certainly is that in Ontario anyway, there was a perception that retinue was its own reward too. So retinue service for a long time, it wasn't a blatant prejudice. It was more like it was a little bit unspoken that it's its own reward because it puts you in direct contact with royalty. And that's really changed. And, you know, as a feminist, I see a lot of this also as being an extension of women's work and how it's perceived. And so it has evolved over time. So,
well, and I will say, I fully have to thank Duchess Brennan, who was the first Queen of Glenavon and a mentor to me and my spokesperson in the circle, and also to Duke William and Duchess Honora, who gave me the Pelican. They were all great supporters, so I appreciate them.
Well, speaking of feminist, because you are not just a former SCA queen, but a pageant queen too, which you and I have had great conversations about that. Yes, and I'm intrigued by that, mostly, Mary Grace, because I feel like there's some cognates between reigning in the SCA and doing pageants. And I'd love to hear you just talk a little bit about what the similarities and differences were for you.
Yeah, so the first thing, well, so my joke is always, I only do hobbies that involve crowns. So if you don't have a crown, I'm not interested. But no, so like I did them some in high school, and then I kind of stopped, and then, you know, life went on and I got very into the SCA. And then I had 4 little children under the age of 4, and I needed like a deadline to get like back in shape. And so I said, do this one. And then, you know, I got back into them. But ultimately, you know, my husband and I are great partners, and the SCA is something that we share and that we're very passionate about, and we're super lucky to have each other and this hobby that we love. My kids, I have 4 teenagers. They're crazy, but they're awesome. You know, I have a very demanding job, all these things in my life. But at this point in my life, the pageantry piece, that's the thing that is just for me. And it is something that by being involved, it forces me to take that time for me and to spend time with other women in a way that I wouldn't, because I think women are natural servants. We're natural givers. We will put ourselves below our family and do things for other people before we do things for ourselves. And by continuing to stay involved in this organization, I'm like, nope, sorry, got to Zoom with my girls, right? And so ultimately, while, you know, some people think it's silly or whatever, it's a sisterhood for me that is special in a way that's hard to describe, but it also forces me to take that me time and to spend time with other smart, powerful, amazing women that fill up my cup in a way that my husband and my children can't. So that's what's most important to me about it. But I think the thing that both Sparkly Crowns and SCA Crowns have taught me is I, in a very tiny way, understand like what the Kardashians are like, Jennifer Ann. It's like these people on the on the cover of like, you know, like the magazines, like that 15 minutes, because there are there are thousands of people in the world that think they know me. They think they know who I am, what my motivations are, what I'm like, you know, what makes me tick. And I may have met them for 10 seconds one time. And so that's very hard because I'm naturally a people pleaser. I want everybody to like me. And one of the things I've had to learn over the years, both through pageantry and through being a queen in the SCA, is I can't control how people think about me. I can't control how they feel. I can't control if they're jealous or angry or whatever. All I can do is to be my very best self and to be as kind as them as I possibly can. And if they choose to think a different way about me, I can't control that. That's a struggle for me. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to love me. I want everybody to love each other. But that's something by that minuscule in comparison to, you know, like a real star exposure to people. But, you know, when I go to Penzic and I walked in the street and people say hi to me and I couldn't pick them out of a lineup, my first thought is, oh my God, how do they know me? What do they think about me? And then I have to let it go. Mm-hmm. And that's a struggle for me constantly to know that I can't control how they feel about me.
Well, and there is another piece that you've hit on some really important topics, but let's talk about something pretty frivolous, and that is the clothes. Because you get to wear fabulous clothes. And I noticed that you're wearing a hat right now that might have been made by a certain
Master Charles.
Yes.
Suburban. Yes. He posted this pink hat. I'm like, why did you even post that? It belongs to me. I can't. That was dumb. I'm Duchess Barbie. Bring me the hat.
And you've had, and I can show a few of these slides if you'd like, because let's see, I'm going to start with your, let's see, let's do these. Just so we can see you in some of these amazing outfits. So here you're all in white, which is a brave choice.
Yeah, so apparently people who said they were my friends are not my friends because I was so pregnant you could see me from space and they let me wear white. But the reason that moment is special is because this is Duchess Brennan and Duke Taradu, the first king and queen of Glenavon. They were already a duke and a duchess before they became the first king and queen of Glenavon. And so Halbrook and I were a count and a countess, and so we would have been the first duke and duchess. And when you have a new kingdom, that first duke and duchess is styled duke and duchess of the kingdom. But we felt that was wrong. They had survived Katrina. It was crazy. It's a much longer story. And so this is a moment where we had special scrolls made for them, and we said, we don't want those titles. We give them to you. And Bree never cries, and she bawled, and it was very special. So this is when the moment they became Duke and Duchess Glenavon. So it's very special.
That's very cool.
And then the other photo is Duke Uther, where we got to name, he was the first knight of Glenavon. So that was when we were announcing to put him on a vigil.
And then I see, so here's a pretty fabulous dress that you're wearing.
Yeah, that was, I made that. When we get to something I didn't make, I'll let you know.
Okay.
But this was my princess, actually, who had been injured on the battlefield at Gulf War. So I was with her. And this is our step down from our first reign in Glenavon. Now this was pretty awesome. So we wanted a Tudor step up, and I told my ladies in waiting, I said, hey, if you don't have to do Tudor, but if you do, I'll make your hat. And I thought like 3 or 4. Yeah. So I had to make a bunch of hats.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There might have, I hate to tell you, Laurel, but there might have been a glue gun involved. I probably still have scars. But there's a lot of hats. It was amazing. It was really, really cool.
That's awesome. This is pretty great. I see now this isn't more that time period that you were talking about that you prefer.
Yeah, or 14th century. Yeah. So this is that was at Lily's. And then this the upper left hand side, that's Mistress Marion. She was the first Laurel of Glenavon. We got to announce that as well. And then giving out another award. So it's pretty special. But
we have so many questions about this.
Okay, so one of the cool things that we love in Meridier's and Glenavon, and we did a little bit in our step down and on tier, is the theater. So in Meridier's, people die. You don't just like peacefully step down. Except for me, I don't die. I'm always young and beautiful. It's my only skill. So We had, so when we were the second crown of Glenavon, we changed the kingdom calendar because it had been, so it wouldn't conflict with Meridier. So we changed it. So that meant we stepped down. He fought in crown, and 6 weeks later we were crown prince and princess again. So our entourage, our retinue was literally ready to kill us. So I said, listen, I promise, if you guys can make it through this, you get to murder him at the end. And so we did the last few events, we did this whole Roman thing. And at our step down, he pulled together the retinue and said, don't worry, I've decided not to step down, and your heirs, your children can serve my children. And they all had daggers. And so they killed the king. And then I paid somebody off. I said, I want my villa and my jewels as promised. So it was hysterical. And they carried his body out. But yeah, we had the
really
lounging
good.
thrones. Yeah, it was great. It was really fun.
Joel was having litter envy.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh no, and there's a chariot too. I'll send you pictures. It was great.
I think I've actually hauled that chariot in a parade before.
Probably a go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've hauled that chariot.
I love this
Yeah.
heraldic dress that you're wearing here.
Yeah, so it has my heraldry on one side and his on the other. This was our final Glenavon reign together. This is the one we were king and queen at Gulf after this. So the Duchess that took this photo, her caption was, "Is this happiness?" But you'll notice, and this is one thing people ask me all the time, is like, it must get easier. And I'm like, no, it gets worse, because the first time you have no idea what to expect. You're just like, oh my God, what's about to happen? Every subsequent time you're like, oh my God, I know what's about to happen. So, I'm his biggest cheerleader. He's an amazing athlete. He's 53. He's been fighting since he was 13. He's been through cancer in the past 2 years, and he continues to be an amazing athlete. And so he's going to fight till his arm falls off, and I'm going to be his cheerleader on those sidelines forever. So, but it's still like your stomach drops out when it happens.
These are pretty fabulous too. We only have a few more, Joel. Sorry, we have to look at the dresses.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Right.
this contraption that I'm wearing is a Master Charles as well, with the big what do you call her? The sleeves and everything. I actually made what Habort is wearing by hand entirely, except for the machine embroidery. We were sort of a mismatched pair, but that's what he wanted to wear. So yeah, but that was. I had the biggest bum roll that we actually had to use our personal chairs. My ass would not fit in the Kingdom Thrones. My butt was literally too big for that chair.
Now, was that discovered in a rehearsal, or was that?
I got worried beforehand. So yeah, these are a couple Gulf War pics, and then there's me and you, Dagmere, when you're
That's
queen.
right. That's from Penzic in my last reign, but I really am more interested in looking at your gown here. So this is more of your Tudor.
Yeah. So this was okay. So little known fact: my very first event in Ontario was at Skeggy's coronation at 12th night, and I was in the ceremony. My first event, I had met Skeggy a couple times, and he's like, "Hey, you should be in the ceremony," and I was like, "Okay, I don't even know what I'm doing." So yeah. So this is a transitional Tudor gown that I made. I love this hat. But I got thrust onto the scene by handing the staff to
And look,
Tasia.
we finally got you into Viking era here. So, but with the bicocket, which is hilarious.
I'm not in Viking. I'm
You're not. You're not.
No, I'm not.
That's true. I'm looking carefully there.
I'm in a Cody. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I love the faces in that. And then
I remember this event very well. It was, I think,
5 million degrees.
It was like 9 million degrees, which for Ontier is really rare.
I remember after the ceremony, all the Canadians came up to me and said, "I'm going to my tent now. Don't take it personally. I'll be back in like 3 hours." I'm like, okay, no problem.
We don't handle the heat well here, but we camp in the rain. So
Right.
There's more Ontier. I think black and gold and white is very becoming on you. So
Thank you. Yeah, this is so these two dresses were made by Lori and Margot, and like amazing, talented ladies out in Everett. Just so great. And I love that one shot. You kind of get the behind the scenes view. Like that's the best part of the job, is getting to look into people's faces and hold their hands and tell them how fantastic they are. It really is.
That's right. And look at this, you rocking.
And Little People, I love Little People.
Yes.
And then the one on the far right, I got to be Queen of Ontier at Glenavon's 10th anniversary celebration. So I got to fly down there as a former Queen of Glenavon, as Queen of Ontier, and it was so special. It's really great.
You're carrying the orb.
The orb. I know. I missed
It's
the
a very
orb.
important symbol.
Very special. Very
And,
special.
It's basically a brass. I think it's a brass headboard knob.
It was like a knob, but it's very beautifully crafted now.
Yes, it is.
Story. Lovely.
And you can see the huge lists behind you in the middle photo there.
That was at Penzic.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's
Yeah.
at Mhm.
And then here you are in the green dress of doom, which I know
Yes.
intimately also.
Very well. Yeah, these two very special moments that the Masters of Defense were created the reign before Halbork and I stepped up in Ontier, and having the opportunity to create Masters of Defense was very special for me, and I have a great bond with these two individuals, and you've got some like top 10 moments as crown and special awards that you remember, and these were both very, very special for me.
I'm going to stop now because we're going to come back to that slide.
Okay.
We have lots.
And actually, that leads into a question I really wanted to ask. You have an obvious love of giving out awards and recognizing people for their hard work, their dedication, their skills. What is an award that doesn't exist right now that you would like to create, whether at a local, kingdom, or society level?
I don't know if there's an award that doesn't exist. That's a really hard question. Each kingdom has their different options. I think one of the things, and Ontier is moving towards it now, that's kind of standard in some other kingdoms, is making sure you have enough sort of layers or levels, right? Because if people, they get sort of that AOA level, and then if it's like this long time before the next level, I think that can be very discouraging for people. And so a lot of kingdoms have AOA level awards for the different tracks, so arts and fighting and service, what have you, and then like a grant level layer, and then your peerage level. And so that's one thing I would encourage kingdoms to think about, even if it's not that prescribed, is that kind of like I was saying earlier, like people need that encouragement to keep going. And so if you get your AOA and it's 10 years before anything else gets recognized, even if though you're constantly in that hamster wheel, it's very discouraging. And it's not that people do what they do for awards, but it's human nature. You want to be thanked, right? And so that's the one thing is I would make sure that, you've got, whether it's those layers or on a regional or baronial level, that you're able to recognize those people as they move along the track. I always hate when I've been crowned to get, oh yeah, this person hasn't gotten an award for 25 years. You're like, what happened? And it does. Sometimes people fall through the cracks. Maybe they stop playing and come back. But that would be the big thing, is just to make sure that you don't have big gaps in the system where people get lost, because that's where they go away.
And Mary Grace, that's making me think that in Ontier, we have such a good OP, and it's, the data behind it is so great that we could easily do some data mining and figure out what's the statistical average between,
like, at what point do people sort of go, yeah,
right, stop, or are they receiving baronial awards? And is that being maintained, or principality level awards? So that's being encouraged in other ways. So I think I just created an unfunded mandate for somebody in the kingdom to maybe.
There you go.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
That's
No,
really
for sure.
Yeah.
And so as you walk through an event, I imagine with all of your time, both as a peer and as a rose, you've had to go to a lot of vigils. Not had to go, but you've been able to visit a lot. I'm sorry.
No, have to go. That's
okay, or have to go. What is a kind of go-to piece of advice? And I know it's going to be catered to the individual, but there's usually kind of a core there of a go-to piece of advice. Don't be a dick. And what would yours be?
Yeah, no, it's that. It's don't be a jerk, but insert the other word. The biggest thing for me, there's two things. One, you're not getting like tapped with a magic wand and there's suddenly somebody else. Like you're already who that person, you're being recognized for who you are right now and who you are today. So don't feel like you have to change. And your path isn't over. Like this is a new beginning, not an ending. And I've seen people be like, whew, got it. I can rest now. You know what I mean? And it's not. You're now even more visible than you were before. And so your responsibility level just got upped. So keep being you. Be that amazing person that's getting recognized by the crown today. But understand that this is coming with a little bit of baggage, some responsibility, and that people are going to look up to you probably even more than they do already. So don't change, but understand there is a bit of a transformation and it's just a new journey that you're on. And that, now it's your job to help bring people along the path with you, but mainly don't be a jerk.
It's really good advice. I think all of us have had our moments though. And sometimes I really do think though that people don't intend to be a jerk. There's no roadmap to being a peer really. You're just recognized and then you have meetings and there's not a training manual or anything like that. You do have to really be able to intuit some of it. And that's not necessarily a skill that everybody has right out of the chute. So
also my advice to crowns for peer meetings is Metoo Sticks. So I don't know, Dagmar, you may remember my tool called the Metoo Stick. It can be popsicle sticks. It can be whatever you want. You pass them out to everybody in the group. And if somebody is talking and you agree with what they're saying, you hold up your stick. So you don't have to stand up and say the exact goddamn thing that person just said for another 5 minutes. Because I got 4 more peerage meetings. So hold up your stick and I can look and go, okay, like 30 people agree with you. And it can be negative, positive, whatever. So Metoo Sticks, crowns, Metoo Sticks.
I think that's a great point, especially in a kingdom the size of Antir. Our peerage meetings can be like epic and really grueling.
I also loved, and the Metoo Sticks with the laurels, they came back and half of them had drawings on them. They had made them more beautiful. Thank you, laurels.
That's right. Very good. Well, that is great advice for anyone attending a vigil, certainly not just someone who's serving as royalty or who's a royal peer. And I'm sure you also put your personal touch on it, which you do on everything. But one of my favorite things about you, Mary Grace, is that you've had enough children to field an intramural basketball team, which is astounding and amazing. And I would love to hear a little bit about how your reigns have been affected by your kids' involvement. And I'm going to put this adorable photo back on the screen of your kids when you were reigning in Thierry. Yeah. This is just such a great picture.
It's a great picture. I love it so much. Yeah, so obviously first reign, we didn't have children yet. Second reign, they're all pretty little. It wasn't until we reigned they actually didn't remember much about the Glenavon reigns. In fact, I was pregnant with our twins at our first Glenavon coronation. So, they don't remember. So it wasn't until we were crowned in Antir that they really kind of got it. Although one of my favorite stories is when Gray is our oldest, and when he was little, we're at an event, and when you have kids activities, the parents need to go and volunteer X amount of time. And so Gray was at the kid activity and they were doing precedence and protocol, right? And they said, okay, kids, well, what do we call the king and queen? Gray goes, mommy and daddy? Like, okay, maybe we should ask another kid, right? But it really wasn't until we got to Antir, they're a little bit older, that they sort of got it. And so on the way back from Crown Tournament, we kind of had this whole conversation about it. We expect you to behave all the time regardless, but now everybody will know who you are. So you have to be respectful, all these expectations that we had. And there's a thing that Antir does that's pretty cool. And they do a sort of a title or recognition. It's the Prince and Princess Royale. And they get in the OP and everything. And most people do it at coronation. But we told our kids they would have to earn it, that they would have to behave properly. And if they did, by the end of the reign, then we would do that. And they did a great job. So I got beautiful scrolls at the end of the reign. And, we had a moment with them at the end. People were like, oh my gosh, it was like Lion and Witch in the wardrobe with your kids up there. And but, we kind of said, like, listen, like, people are going to know who you are. You're a little bit on stage here, right? So yeah, I was really, really impressed with them. And there are certainly moments where they're like, they need you and they want you and you're supposed to be someplace else. And, it's definitely challenging the older that they get in different ways. Because when they're babies, like, anybody wants to hold a cute baby, right? But, when they need a diaper changed, or, they're toddlers, it gets more challenging. But I think the cool thing about it is that it sends a signal to other people that it's okay to be mom or be a parent and do this job, right? Like, and I think one of the things we have to continue to be better at in the SCA is be more inclusive of families. Like, we're just not for singles or for young couples. Like, people have kids and there's stuff for kids to do. And so you as Crown, you just show up at that kids activities or go do archery with your kids or whatever, and kind of set that example too of, like, there's stuff for kids to do. So, it wasn't always easy, but we have great kids. And yeah, they definitely have fun in on tier and definitely the tier reign as well. And my twin girls especially kind of got the hang of the lady in waiting thing and really enjoyed doing that. So yeah, so we're
one
lucky.
of my favorite memories from one of my reigns were two of my guard members pulling my then 3-year-old around in a wagon on the as we were, technically we were partying, but people who know me know that meant I had a drink on the Eric or on
right.
the trail. These were two of our illustrious knights now in the kingdom, who at the time were just lowly squires, and they were pulling my kid around. And I remember looking over at them, and they were taking the job so seriously to make sure that he didn't get left alone in camp, or not alone, but left with somebody he didn't know and
right.
woke up
yeah.
suddenly. And I just remember thinking, like, this is my SCA, is, having these guys who are like, okay, this is our job now, and we're going to take this very seriously and pull this child around behind the crown while they go and socialize with people. And it was incredibly special for us too.
Yeah, we had, when our twins were babies, we had a Moses basket. They both fit in, and then somebody would be carrying the basket around with the babies in it. So yeah,
that's terrific. And I hope at some point your kids might come back and be involved in their own right in the SCA.
I think so. Yeah, they're all, obviously we're all itching to get back out to events, but they definitely miss it for sure. Yeah.
So when you started, when you were young, say when you were a kid in the SCA,
you're so kind.
Who did you want to be when you grew up? Who was a mentor?
Oh my gosh.
An SCA mentor that you looked at and you went, too
easy. So when I started the SCA, I quickly fell into a household, a gentleman named by Counselor Elazar. So anybody who's been to Gulf War, he is one of the owners of the Green Dragon, and his lovely wife, Mistress Marion, who was the first Laurel. You saw the picture there earlier. He became sort of my SCA dad, like very early on, and he was squired before he was a knight. To a gentleman who's no longer with us, but his wife, Duchess Jacqueline was my first queen in the SCA, and that she was one of the people I described earlier, a full Elizabethan at my first event. And I just remember like, oh, I'm never gonna be queen, but if I could just like dress like Jacqueline, if I could just be like as confident as Jacqueline and that whole thing. And I wanted to be her, and so, and I never, ever in a million years imagined that I would have a chance to be queen. Like, that wasn't even on the radar. And so she's definitely one of the people that I tried to, to emulate and think about when I was queen. And I think one of the hardest things for me talking about that, you can never go back thing is that, like, to this day, 25, whatever years is, I still like, hi, Jacqueline. Oh my gosh. Like, she is just a little intimidating to me. Right. But it took me a long time to realize that I'm that for somebody else. And I'm like, I'm just Mary Grace. Like, what? Like, I'm just me. And, you know, when this people start like, you're kind of scary, or like, I'm a little intimidated to talk to you or whatever. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's not like I'm Jacqueline, you know what I mean? But it took a while for me to click in that, but I'm somebody else's Jacqueline, right? And so when it finally hit me was I was talking to another pillar for me is Duchess Anna, who has been queen more than anybody else in the SCA. And she's an amazing, beautiful soul, like just one of the most kind, generous people you ever want to meet. And I get really verklempt every time I would talk to her. I'm like, oh my God, hi, Anna. How's it going? I turned in like a 12-year-old. Like, I don't know what it was. And because I'm like, but I'm just me. I'm not Jacqueline. I'm not Anna. I'm just Mary Grace, you know? And we were at Pensick and she said, do you not like me? And I was like, oh my God, Anna, I can't. She said, well, it's just you're not as bubbly around me as everybody else. I'm like, but you're Duchess Anna. And she looked at me and said, Mary Grace, I want to be you when I grow up. And I just was like, oh, I started crying. And so what I've taken from that is I have to try harder to make people not be scared to talk to me, to, you know, and I never use my title when I introduce myself. I'm like, hi, I'm Mary Grace, right? Like, to be that more friendly, to, you know, to put myself out there, because I've realized that people aren't just going to walk up and talk to me. Like, I can walk up to any group of anybody in the SCA, even if I don't know them, and feel confident. But that's not true for everybody. And so it's hard because you have to put yourself back into those shoes that you wore the first day and imagine how you felt. And then that's how those other people feel, right? And you have to be the person that goes over and talks to them. And so I try really hard to introduce myself at events to people I've never met before, or people that I think are new, because I don't want them to feel intimidated and like they can't come talk to me.
And so I know that I made a mistake early on when I was, after I was recognized for being a knight. It was my second event after I had gotten knighted. I made a mistake that stuck with me and was a good learning experience. Is there something similar where you made a mistake, but it was where you immediately learned from what you did, that you've been able to move forward and it helped you grow as a peer and as a person?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing after having been crowned is to realize that every crown is not going to do things the way you would do them. And you get a bee in your royal bonnet and you feel like you have to go over and tell them, you know, right? Like, I don't know if you know, but blah, 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 blah. And it is hard, like, because you work really hard during that year, and you set up, whether you set up new awards or you do other things, and maybe they get rid of stuff that you did, or maybe they do things in a totally different way. You know what? It's 6 months and they're not crowned anymore. So, but that's really hard after, like, definitely after the first time, I was like, why are they doing that? That's not right, but you have to let go. And that was very hard for me to realize, it's their reign. They can do it however they want to. They're not going to burn the kingdom down.
I mean,
it's their show.
Somebody tried to, in our last reign, there was a large fire at our event, but it was put out very quickly. So, we could have burned the kingdom down as king. I'm just letting you know, it could have happened.
It could have happened. Right. But, I think that it's hard because you do invest so much of yourself if you do it right in that job. And then when you see somebody come behind you, whether with a different viewpoint or doing things that, especially when you feel like they don't care and they're kind of like in for themselves or whatever, like you can get like real pissed off about it. But at the end of the day, that's how we choose our monarchs. And until that changes, they get to do what they want to do unless it's illegal. So, but that can be hard.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good segue into the next question, which is what keeps you in the SCA and what inspires you the most? And I'm not just talking to Mary Grace, Duchess. I'm talking to you, human being who that this hobby can be frustrating, and it can have those moments where you're just like, oh, what is going on? But obviously it's something you love, or you wouldn't still be doing it, right? So what inspires you?
The people, for sure. You know, like my my joke is always the best and the worst thing about the SCA is we let anybody in, right? But in that anybody,
Yep.
you know, until I found the SCA, I never felt like I could be completely me, because I am very girly. I am very like I was, you know, in a sorority and, you know, very sparkly, and I'm very sort of that traditional Southern girl person. But the other side of me is so geeky. Like I love Star Trek and I love to read, and, you know, I love all this costuming stuff. Like I love to dress up, you know. That was like, again, that's the sort of like thing I had to kind of keep quiet over here, because it wouldn't have been accepted by, you know, this other group of people. And so I felt it, like I said earlier, immediately at my first event, that magic moment where the rest of the world went away and this group of people accepted and loved me for me. And that is not something that you find many other places. There are dozens of people in this organization I could pick up the phone and call any time of day or night, and they would be there for me without hesitation. And so the people, first of all. I think the second part of it is that I am constantly blown away by the skills that people have. And there are things that I've learned I never thought I would be interested in. You know, you go to an event and you're like, oh, wow, I guess I'll take that class, right? And so the knowledge that I've gained over the past 25 years and things that I've learned has been so much fun. And then it's, you know, again, it's a thing that binds our family together. It's a thing that we love to do as a family. There are not many hobbies that you and your teenagers can all go out and enjoy together. And I think that's super fun. And then it fuels my creative energy. Like I love making the garb and designing garb and all that. So yeah.
It won't surprise you to know, Mary Grace, that there have been a lot of comments coming in as the Facebook feed has been going, which I've not been watching. Ashaxi's been
I haven't either.
watching that for us. Yeah. But one of the questions that came up speaking to this connection with people is from someone named Siga, who wonders if you remember the song that they sang for you at 12th night when you were stepping down as queen. It was the first time they had ever sung a song in the SCA, let alone one they had written. And they were so terrified and awkward, but you were both so kind about it. And, you know, the fact that that was such a huge moment for them that speaks to what you're talking about, you know. It is.
Yeah, no, it was lovely. And I do remember it. I appreciated it so much.
Yeah. It's those beautiful little moments that I think when we've had the honor of being queen and serving in that office, you do realize how much generosity people do extend towards the crown and towards the station, you know, towards not just the people, but the position and the tradition of it. So
for sure. Yeah. Thank you for that comment. That's a great memory.
So in the age of the plague that we have going on, we've been able to stay connected through the technology and through Zoom chats like this, everything. What is the one thing you miss most about in-person events right now?
Well, I mean, all of it, but you know, if you sort of close your eyes and think about, you know, just, you know, fires going and chats happening and songs going, just walking around the campground with your beverage and talking to people and laughing, and that the one of the best things about the SCA is getting away from the modernity, right? To leave your real life, your real name, all of that behind, be somebody else for a little while and escape. And so I think that's the hardest thing for all of us now, is that we can't get away from it, you know, it being, you know, the virus and stuck at home and trying to school kids at home and all these kind of things. And so our escape to be as a group with each other is, you know, something I think that we're all desperately missing. And while this is great and it's fun, it's getting away from the technology, sitting around that fireside, singing songs, laughing, watching people play silly Viking games, smacking each other with the pillows, and the whole thing. I've been at an event where I watch my daughters chase leaves falling off a tree for 30 minutes, like having them put the phone down and all that. And it's just hard to do when you're at home. So I desperately cannot wait till we're all back together again in that space.
Well, the solution, of course, is for all of us to have an event that's a month long. So we have plenty of time to be sure that none of us are sick. So, maybe
I've got 5 acres, so you guys just come on out.
Yeah,
we'll be fine.
We need to all save up all of our leave or all of our pennies. And in 2 years, when it's safe to do that, we'll just do one big event for a month. I don't know, buy out Disney World or something. And
I don't know. Pentic is going to be 6 weeks long this year. Yeah.
This is going to be off the chain.
Yes. And before we go, because we're about to close up here, but I do want to just do a few more slides because you have some, we have to share this epic hair that you have in this slide. I'm going to share screen here. That is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I love that so much. And this is when you were Princess of Tyri.
Yeah, it was when I was Princess of Tyri. This is not last summer, but the summer before. There was a lot going on in the world. And I felt very compelled at our investiture to sort of make a statement that everybody is welcome, everybody's included, everybody's valued, and everybody's protected, that bullies were not welcome. And so my favor during that reign was a rainbow ribbon with a silver dove. And so I gave those out to everybody during our reign to make sure that people knew how important it was to us. So I'm wearing one of them right now, actually. That is one of the things as well that's important when you're in that seat of, I guess, power, presumed power, or you have an obligation and an opportunity to protect the people that you represent. And so we wanted to make a very bold statement that jerk faces were not welcome, and that everybody was race, color, creed, orientation, that they were all welcome within our bounds, and that we would protect and love them.
Wonderful. Here's another couple of cute pictures of you. That ermine is over the top.
Yeah, I love that one. That's my Elizabeth of York dress. I love, love, love. And then this other photo is very important to me. I wanted to share. This is Master Terrifon Grey Dragon. I'm gonna cry. He was the gentleman that passed away from the jousting accident a couple years ago, and I've known him forever and ever and ever. He was an incredible man. I have to think that somewhere he was like, that was the coolest, most medieval way to die. That would be him.
That's a really nice way to think of it.
He was just, so my favorite thing about him is every time I would see him, I'm like, hey, how are you doing? He would say, if I were any better, I'd be twins. I mean, he was just like the most positive, amazing guy. And he came up for Ampri while I was Princess of Tyri, and that was the last time I got to see him, and he passed away about a month after that. So I wanted to definitely include him.
That is really special. And this last photo, you probably have a few comments about that, which I would love for you to share.
Yeah, so after Howard and I had been crowned together 4 times, my joke is I threw a baroness in the way. But I had been working on this amazing lady for quite some time. Her name is Morgana, and she had been Baroness of Axmore, which is New Orleans. She's kind of one of those people that's like everybody's mom. And in my heart, she deserved to be queen. She just is such an amazing, special person. And I told her, I said, well, he's going to start fighting for you. And she laughed at me. And I said, no, I'm serious. So we sat down with her and her husband and had dinner, and Howard started fighting and crowned for her. It took him a couple of times. And of course, going into that weekend, we knew we were moving to Antir. But he said, what do I want? I said, well, don't tell her, because if you tell her, she's going to say, don't fight. And who knows what'll happen. So of course he does fight. He does win. And this is the fall. I had gotten the job. I came out in January. So my first year in Ontier, my husband was king of Glenavon and was flying back and forth. But it was 100% worth it. It was the greatest gift I could give one of the most amazing women I have ever had the opportunity to know in my whole life. So now she is Countess Morgana. So that is why Havark has one more reign than me, but it is totally worth it. The best part was when people would be running around and like, oh, what's happening at court? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not queen. Go ask her. It was amazing because I just got to sleep with the king. I didn't have to do any work. It was a pretty good gig.
Well, we are about to close this up because we're just slightly over time. We started a little late. And I just wanted to see, is there anything else you'd want to share before I do my final act?
Just thank you again for this opportunity. It's so great. As I said before we went live, it was kind of really neat for me to go back and look at all these pictures for the past 25 years. And I am so fortunate to have had the opportunities that I have had. When we went into our first reign, we said, you know what, we might never do this again. And we did something like 40 something events in that 1 year. We also got married, and so we went into that experience like it was going to be the only time. And so each and every time we've had that opportunity to serve the kingdom or the principality has been a gift. And so I guess I would say, don't shy away from it. It's kind of like that old Army commercial. It's the hardest job you'll ever love, but it is such a spectacular way to serve the people. And if you go into it with that framework that you are a servant of the people, it will be the most valuable experience you could ever have in the society. It's just, again, the generosity that people show you is truly overwhelming. And I'm so lucky to have the experiences that I've had.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And we're so grateful that you chose to spend this time with us tonight and with all of the people watching. There are many. And as you know, there is a great tradition among royalty to hand each other baskets that they probably got from another set of royalty, but filled with different stuff. And we can't give you an actual basket. And so we're imagine that we are handing you right now a virtual gift basket of items that you will be able to either have for yourself or possibly be able to share with, no, just keep it for yourself. But I need to know a few things before I hand it to you. Milk or dark chocolate?
Dark.
Dark, okay. Red or white wine?
White.
Okay, and puppies or kittens?
Both.
Okay, all right. So we are giving you a basket with dark chocolate, white wine, some puppies and some kittens. I'm thinking maybe a bottle of self-tanner just for emergencies.
It would not go with this.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit of club soda in case you spill anything, right? I think
Perfect.
That's a very practical gift.
That is very practical.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that your kids will be thrilled with the puppies and kittens. And so please imagine that we're giving you a beautiful gift basket that you can recycle.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. As long as there's no bath salts, I'll be great.
No, not at all. And if there were, they will be commercially produced and non-scented. Okay, so that's a tip.
I feel there's a story behind that.
Yeah.
For another time, maybe.
For another time, that's right. Joel, any parting words?
Your Grace, thank you so much for all of your time. And I really enjoyed this opportunity to be able to chat with you and hear your story and experiences. This was an experiment. It was an idea that's come up for a while, and we're genuinely honored that you joined us.
Thank you.
So this will be everyone's favorite new weekly episodic internet series.
Of course.
Next week, we'll be interviewing Duchess Magdalena of Calontir, who I'm very excited to. She's one of my heroes of the SCA. Very much looking forward to that conversation. And for people that are listening at home, if you have duchesses that are that you believe would be interested in this, please have them message me, have them message the Sisters Interview or Duchess Dagmere, and we will see what we can do about scheduling. So
That's right.
that's it for me. Your Grace,
Yes.
thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and technology hiccup aside, I think this was a great first interview.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks again to the sisters for hosting us.
Yeah, thanks, Shoxie.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Be safe. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
All right.